Thanks everyone for joining me again. Dr. Orlando Walters from the OWL podcast, and I have Eddy here. He's in the mental health realm, and he was really kind of bestowing upon myself and others some really interesting information. But I'll allow him to introduce himself, what he does, and we can go from there.
So, yeah, my name is Eddy. It's super simple. I keep the introduction simple. I'm a PMHNP, which is just a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. I deal with basically all spectrums of the mental health universe, right, as you want to call it. I mostly specialize in adolescents and middle age, so that whole spectrum from 5 to 60, but I go as high as, geriatrics, I guess you would say, yeah.
Okay, all right. Interesting. Now, I know we were chatting earlier, and I really wanted to kind of delve into pre, during, and post COVID, because you brought up some really good points in terms of the thought process of individuals prior to COVID, how they handle COVID, and then post COVID.
For sure.
So the what would you say is the common denominator in terms of individuals and their frames of mind prior to the COVID?
I think and I'm going to speak about Florida, but this can translate to so many other cities in the United States. I think we live such busy lives that keep us almost, it's like the hamster, right? It's in this constant wheel that's just rotating. We're very routine based creatures, and our routines keep us busy from our thoughts. And it is in those individuals that sometimes don't have hobbies, or maybe their jobs are not as demanding. Again, it can happen to everybody, that they become self-aware of what's going on internally. Yeah. But pre-COVID, we were all busy. It was a tough time, right? I'm thinking about like 2018, 2019, right? Politically, it was a busy time. The world was changing. I think you started to see that influx of career-based, but we weren't very aware of mental health. I think mental health is, even though it's been around, if you see the changes that it's taken, it's night and day. And I'm speaking from the DSM-5, which is what we used to diagnose. Even from DSM-4 to DSM-5, the diseases stayed the same, but the way we define them changed because we're becoming more self-aware of what like mental health is. So pre-COVID, yeah, I think we were just really busy with work. To simplify it, right? I don't want to use too much we'll keep it layman's terms. We're really busy with our careers. As far as humans, we live in a society where everything is on the go, right? Especially Miami, we're always on the go.
Right.
We deal with anxiety. We deal with the pressures of work, family life, socioeconomic, friends. But I think for the most part, again, busy is I know it sounds very, it's a very generic word, but busy is the right word to use. We're creatures that we're busy.
So we need to stay busy, and we need to have something to focus on.
Correct. It is when we're not. Yeah, actually, yes and no. Let me refrain from saying yes. Yes and no. We need to stay busy. We need to have hobbies. We need to have leisure time, but we also need to be aware of who we are. And it goes back to what we had spoken before. We need to be aware of who we are as humans and who we are as internally, because while all these things can be good, they could also be seen as distractions. And it's once you become self-aware of who you are, and that's why most people will tell you that their thoughts at night are the strongest. Because at night, it's when we're trying to fall asleep or we're trying to shut down, but there's no distractions. At least we shouldn't have distractions. But that's when we start to think, hey, how was my day? Let's recollect, right? How was my day? How was this conversation that I had? Oh, maybe I should have said this. Oh, did I pay my bills? Did I do this? And that all comes during leisure time. It doesn't come when you're at work. Very few times you're going to be busy with a client or a patient, or if you're an accountant doing numbers, you're going to be thinking, oh, did I do this? Or no, it's like when you're at Zen. So before you go to sleep, you're always thinking about these things. And I think that's what COVID brought to us. It brought a time where we had to really sit in front of our thoughts because for the most part, most people were alone.
Right.
And most of us don't know how to be alone. Think about it. Relationship-wise, we don't know how to be alone. We have friends. Most people have friends. If we don't have friends, what are we seeing like as loners, right? It's not too, it's frowned upon. Relationship wise, society tells us that we need to have partners because we have to procreate, or we have to have partners. If we don't have partners, what do? We're constantly looking for partners, and we force these relationships. And we could even expand on, like, that's why divorce rates are so high and all these other things, right? And as family, right? We're family pods. We have pods, and we're really into our families, right? So COVID pulled all that away. Now it's just us. Even if you lived in a single family house, or you lived with with roommates and things, you're still alone because it forced us to split. We had to be in our rooms by ourselves, especially we got sick. Even at hospital settings, you're by yourself. It's so when you're alone, and I could speak for myself, it is when you have to think about all these thoughts that you think before you go to bed.
So one thing I did notice is, like, during the COVID time, like you said, we're also, we're a lot more alone, because people who are working, they were no longer working, because you have, like, your home family and you have your work family, and then you might have your hobby family or whatever have you, so now you had none of that. Whatever relationships that you did have during that time, whatever it was, kind of got magnified. If there were any problems, small problems got just blown out of proportion, I would imagine. I think it put a microscope on a lot of things in terms of, like, socially.
It did. No, I think you're using the right terminology there. It did put a big magnifying glass on everything. It blew it up, and the minuscule things that maybe we ignored before, we didn't ignore before. Right. Because now there's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to go. If we had problems as friends, I could have maybe put a blind eye to it before, because we did other things. But now we don't have those other things. Right. Now we just have you and me. Now maybe the little comments, the little jabs that you would make at me as a friend that I didn't like before, but I said, hey, that's my gym buddy. Right. I don't want to lose my gym buddy. Now we don't have the gym. Now we need to face, hey, I don't like that you speak to me this way. Right? I don't like. The same thing happened in relationships, partners that now we're kind of forced to live together, or we're really like, now they're just alone. Right. Hey, I don't like that you do this. Now, because we're stuck in a household for 24 hours, right? We don't see each other now before for 8-9 hours because we're at work, but now we're spending all 24 hours together. Hey, I don't like that you do this. I don't like this and that, X, Y, Z. Because think about it. From a relationship point of view, is if you work a regular 8 to 5, it's 9 hours that you don't see each other. If you go to the gym separate, add 2 hours. So you're really together and you sleep for 8. Right. Yeah. So what are you really spending? You're spending 3 hours together?
In terms of quality time.
Quality time. Right. And if that.
True.
Let's give 2 hours of quality time. And you can fake 2 hours. You can have a good 2 hours with anybody. You can fake a 2 hours with anybody.
True.
But now you don't have 2 hours. Now you have 12, 14 hours. And now we have to realize, hey, are we compatible?
True, like really.
Like, are we really compatible? Right. Are we not just compatible because in relationships, people want to have relationships. So we are creatures that want to have relationships. I don't think anybody really wants to be alone. Right. There are moments of that, but I don't think anyone wants to be alone. But now we have to force it. We have to be like, hey, were we just two good friends, or were we just two people that got along and we accepted what we had? And we're like, hey, society's telling us that we got to be together, so let's just do it. Right. But COVID brought that out. And COVID said, no, are we compatible?
Now, in terms of the post-COVID, what were the big changes that you would see at that point? Here's the reason why I say I'm no psychologist by any stretch of the imagination, all right? But I used to coach basketball teams, kids in junior high school and high school, and I noticed there was a difference between all these kids pre and post. I couldn't put a finger on it. I felt like there was just a major disconnect. I couldn't put a finger on it, but I'd see them. They were there physically, but I don't think they were there in mind. They were there in body, but not in mind.
That's a good point that you bring up. Post-COVID world has been extremely interesting, not only for ourselves as humans, but I think from a healthcare point of view, has been completely different because it shook up hospitals. The way we see health nowadays is completely different. If you look at policies from before to now, it's flipped them upside down.
There's been changes, for sure.
Yeah, we realized how weak our infrastructure was now as a society. We're talking about hospital systems, right? Our hospital systems were extremely weak. We don't have the workers. We overworked our workers during COVID. We milked them. We technically forced a lot of hospitals were forcing their workers to work overtime, mandatory overtime, because we just didn't have.
Right.
We don't. It doesn't work. But yeah, post COVID, one thing I've noticed is the amount of anxiety and depression that people have. I think while anxiety and depression are two of the most common things we deal with, it is blatantly obvious now the effects that COVID had.
So do you think COVID magnified it? It was always there?
It was always there. It's always there.
So it just really brought it to the forefront.
Look, I give the example of, this is going to be such a random example, but I think it'll make sense. It's back in the day, if you look at charts, that's a real thing. How many left-handed people there were? If you look at the chart, it goes like very flat. And out of nowhere, like around the 1980s, 1990s, it just spikes. And then we ask ourselves, are there more left-handed people now than before? Mm-hmm. What happened? So back in the day, left-handed people were seen as weird, different, the devil. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It was actually seen as like, from a religious point of view, it was seen as a devil.
Right.
So nothing changed. Just we started normalizing it more. So now we're seeing that peak. It's the same people. And then you're going to see after the spike in left-handed people, it neutralized again because it's leveled out because that's the normal level of it. It's the same thing. It's always been there. We just kept it to ourselves. We didn't want to tell our neighbors, our friends, our family members, hey, I'm depressed. I have anxiety. I have panic attacks. We kept it to ourselves because it was shunned. I think
it was frowned upon.
I grew up in the 90s. It's a different time than yours, but you were there. As a kid, I had moments of anxiety, depression, and it was something that was kept hush hush.
Definitely.
Think about it. We grew up, and I think you could relate. Boys don't cry. Right. Boys don't cry. Right. What do men do? Yeah. We tough it out. Yeah. Throw some dirt on it, right? Like tough it out. We don't speak about our emotions. Right. That's a feminine trait. Yeah. Automatically, and I'm speaking from a male perspective, and women are they have their own things to deal with, but from a male perspective, that's what it was.
And also, I'm Caribbean, so
I'm Caribbean also, yeah.
Okay, so even much more,
And I see that, by the way, to this day in the hospital setting where Caribbean men don't speak about their emotions, they don't take medicine.
Nope.
Medicine is taboo,
and they don't even want to go to the doctor.
And usually when I get them, extremely sick. A million comorbidities, and sometimes too late.
Yeah, it's too late at that point.
It's too late, yeah.
It's too late at that point.
So yeah, COVID just, it was always there. Depression, anxiety was always there. But now people really had to go through it. Where before we could mask it with activities, sports, COVID brought it out. That's why we saw an increase in alcoholism, drug use. And also we saw, like I said, an increase in anxiety and depression, right? Because we went from one day being social and then it turned off the lights.
Right.
Because it happened overnight. They said one day here and then the next day the whole country was closed.
Yeah.
Everything was shut down. We had no time to prepare. And now we find ourselves alone. And when you're alone, we've all been alone. Right. What is it that you think about? I'm asking you.
Like for me, I think about myself. I think about everything I'm doing, what I'm not doing, anything that I am doing, how to do it better, things like that. And then you start criticizing yourself. You could have done this better. And it just kind of rolls in over and over and over and over. Yeah. And the positive talk is harder to come by and is more negative talk. Correct. I guess we're critical of everything and including ourselves.
Correct. And that is a small frame. That's a small window of time. That could happen in the shower, or like I said, right before you go to sleep. But now you have this 24 hours. And not everyone is as adept to deal with their emotions as maybe you, as maybe me. Some of us have better tools. Some of us come from better upbringings. Some of us were taught how to deal with those things. And we're just built differently, right?
For sure.
But those people that don't know how to deal with them, they got scared. It's the best way I could explain. They were scared because, and also it's the time frame, right? The time frame, because you could do it for one day, but now you got to do it for 2 years.
Yeah.
By month 3, the negative, forget the positive talk. The positive talk is no longer there. All you're hearing is the negative talk. And then you're also dealing with stressors.
Right.
Getting sick.
Stressors. Yep.
I don't have money.
Yep. Big one.
The biggest.
Yep.
Money, financial problem is one of the biggest problems I see. So now I don't have money. How am I going to deal with this? For young adults, school's closing. So now I have to go from an in-person, curriculum to all online. So it's all these external stressors, and then the fact that we don't know how to deal with them, right? It's repeating that same line, and then the deeper you get into this cave, I call it a cave, right? Depression is like a cave. The deeper you crawl into that cave, the harder it is to get out. Right? If you've walked 6 miles into the cave, it's different than if you walked 100 feet.
Because the light at the beginning becomes so much smaller and harder
exactly.
to find.
And that's good. You saw the light in the beginning. Eventually, that light stops. Yeah. And what happens when you don't see light anymore? There's no hope. Yeah. The light is hope. Light is hope. In any single even in caves, light is hope. When you see light, you're like, okay, I have hope of getting out. The moment that light disappears, it's done. Yeah, you're done. Yeah. We lost hope. Not only in ourselves and society. COVID is such a unique, I've always thought about writing a book about during the COVID times, because it's not only what was happening internally, but externally. And it was layers upon layers upon layers. We were, like you said, depression, anxiety, fearful, money. The country was broken, right? We heard so many different points of views.
Splintered, yeah, definitely splintered.
Think about what was going on during COVID too. We had riots, we had BLM, we had deaths, right? Not to get too political or anything, but it's just what was happening at the time, right? Sure. And not only from the United States, we also have Europe, right? Italy, Spain, closing. We're hearing what's happening over there. China, what's happening over there. Yeah. We're taking all of this information, we're processing it on top of the anxiety that we already have, and we're just crushing it. One of my friends that's a therapist always tells me that you can only stick so much crap under a rug before the rug becomes too big.
This
right?
is true. Yeah.
It becomes too big. Yeah. And that's what happened. And we walked out of COVID, and we didn't clean that rug. The problems were already there. It's the same metaphor as a hot air balloon. You pump so much, and eventually going to take it. But yeah, the rug is the best metaphor. It's because we found ourselves standing on top of this rug with all these problems or all these feelings, emotions that we didn't know how to deal with before. And it's like, hey, figure it out now.
It's funny you say that. I had a guest. His name was Joey, fitness guru, really good guy. And he said that what that time frame really did was he saw, this is the common denominator he saw one of two things. Individuals, in terms of their fitness, they either dialed in and just really focused on whatever it is to get themselves better, whether it's exercise, activity, diet, so on and so forth, or they just let themselves go and they're 50 pounds heavier, health, their numbers all terrible, So I would assume that probably goes a little bit towards the frame of mind and how an individual really kind of approaches situations, no? I guess it'd have to have a certain degree of resiliency, right?
Yeah, there's with mental health, there is a level of resilience. Some of it are factors that we have no control over, because who we are, to understand mental health or just in general, who we are as people, it doesn't start like in adulthood, right? Like our problems are not created during adulthood. They're created at childhood, right? There's famous psychologists. I'm sure everyone's just gone to school and like knows Freud, right? Like everyone, right? Everyone knows Freud, right? Like trust versus mistrust, ego, right? We all know those basic. And while we studied them in school, we're like, okay, I need to like just learn this and pass.
Yeah.
But they say a lot about who we are. Our problems stem from childhood, from early. If your mother, right? Like if you did things and you were criticized instead of being applauded for them, that's gonna extend to young adulthood and you know, as an adult, right? That's gonna extend. You're gonna be fearful or critical of what you do, of everything, right? So those probably there's a famous psychologist that says that we wake up as adults on top of this dirt mountain with a note in our pocket, and it says good luck. It says good luck.
Oh man.
A shovel in our hand and a note in our pocket, and it says good luck. And start digging. And it's because every single problem that we have, again, we create certain problems, but it could extend back all the way to childhood. So
the relationships that we have with our parents or our caregivers from a very young age,
they play
set the foundation for us.
Yes, that foundation can change because our identity changes as we get older. We don't hold the same moral values sometimes as our parents, but they create the first moral values. They create the first foundation. So if our parents, and it's again, parenting is hard and unique in itself.
Because then you also have children who are different and unique too. But yes,
yeah, and it's not a one size fits all
for sure.
Our parents do our best for the most part. Not some parents don't, and you turn out how you turn out. And our parents are not psychologists. They're not, right?
Exactly. So they don't even know.
They don't even know the effects that their words, their actions can have. And it's sometimes very minimal things that can alter our future. It could be a comment. I always, when I'm seeing a patient, I always tell them to recollect and think of a moment that changed them. And I don't want a big moment. I don't want something like, you failed at something, a divorce or nothing. Tell me a very minuscule moment that you feel like changed you.
Like that one time your mom came late or was looking at your phone during your game.
One example that is very blatant, I think a lot of Caribbean families will relate to this, is the mom calls and says, "Hey, take the meat out of the fridge." It's the dreaded meat out of the fridge, right? And it's it better be thawed once I come home.
Right.
If not, the whooping's coming.
There's trouble.
There's some trouble, yeah. And I don't know if you've forgotten to take the meat out.
Yes, I have.
The moment you hear that door open, you tense.
Yes. You feel
yes.
the anxiety.
Why is that tense? Why is that tense happening?
Because you think something's bad gonna happen.
You're waiting, the cause and the effect.
Right.
You're waiting for the effect now.
Right.
It's the same thing. Now, as we get older, that feeling just translates to another thing. Mom is no longer coming, and it doesn't matter anymore. But now we're
hardwired.
No, we're fully hardwired at this point. We're fully hardwired, and that feeling, no matter what, will never change, unless we treat it, obviously. But it doesn't change, and it's a very small thing as mom calling you. For me, it was my parents. I'll talk about myself a little bit. For me, it was my parents going to church. Okay. Sundays, my parents were, let's go to church, right? My dad's a pastor, so church was like, church was the thing, right? And as I got older, maybe my Sundays, I wanted to spend them definitely watching football, And even as an adult, I was an adult already at this point, like in my 20s. I think I was still living at home at that point. I would now go to church, and my parents didn't. They wouldn't like complain. They, okay, Eddie's okay. He's not going to church. Even when I would hear the door, I would tense. I promise you, I would turn off the TV. Like a child, I would turn off my TV, get in my bed, and act like I was sleeping or do something, because that's what I need to do. That is my response. It's some of it is trauma, right?
No, for sure.
Some of it is trauma, but that was my natural response. I did not think of this. It's not like it just naturalistic came to me. That the tense happened. The breathing got a little harder. The heart rate went higher, right? And I'm like, I got to get into bed. I have to fake it, that I was busy, that I was doing something. Because
what are you doing?
because that's what I've known to do.
Yeah.
We carry all that to adulthood. Now it's just translated differently.
Wow. So my question is, I guess the first thing would be to be able to recognize, to know and acknowledge the fact that there are these things there,
Mhm.
these anxieties or these things that don't seem as if they belong in, you know, what should be happening for that
Correct.
particular moment in time.
Knowing is the battle.
Right.
Any therapist would tell you that once you start having that self-knowledge is when you could deal with these things. Before, forget about it. I always recommend therapy as first-line treatment. I never go the pharmaceutical way. If you don't know how to deal with your thoughts, your emotions, or what's causing it, and medication is not going to stop anything. Medication
Just hides it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the medication, it would almost be the same thing as individuals who self-medicate themselves with alcohol and
Correct.
and illicit drugs
Again,
and things of that nature.
And we're speaking very general here, right?
Okay.
Because there are certain individuals who do require medication, 100%.
Okay.
But if you're not taught how to deal with these things, medication can only go so far. Psychiatry is one of those fields where if you have an infection, I could give you an antibiotic and we fix it.
Right.
Psychiatry is not like that. I'm not going to fix you with a pill. It could take away those feelings, but it's not going to be fixed. If we ever take you off those pills, what's going to happen?
It's coming right
I
back.
still got to deal with those emotions, baby. Those right here. We have to understand. And therapy is great. I always recommend, like I said, therapy because therapy allows you to slow down. That's like the right word, slow down.
Explain.
This is my explanation of life. Life is a big tunnel. We're going down a big tunnel.
Okay.
And think about you're going down a museum, a tunnel, but it's a museum. And there are pictures. You have the Mona Lisa, right? Pictures on the sides constantly. But you're running so fast, you don't see the pictures. The therapist says, hey, buddy, slow down. Stop. Look left and right. What are the pictures? It just allows you to see what's going on.
Gotcha.
So we run so fast through life to get to the ending. We want to get to the finish line so fast that we don't look at the journey. And we hide because we're going so fast. And the pictures are just our emotions, our feelings. And they're blurs. We don't slow down, look at the big picture and deal with them.
All right. So let's say, for instance, we have an inkling something just isn't right.
Mhm.
How do we overcome it?
Okay.
How do we get past it? How do we push through?
So there's multiple ways, right? I want people to understand that emotions are warning signs. They're not answers.
Okay.
Our emotions can lie to us. Emotions are a red light telling you, slow down, something is going on.
So you mean even good emotions?
Even good
happiness
emotions.
and things of that nature?
Even good emotions, sorry. Telling you, hey, slow down. Look at what's around you. What's happening? Think about it like this. If you were to drive up to your house right now, right? You're out with your wife or your kids, whatever it is. Your house is empty. You get to your house and you see the lights on and you see people moving inside. What do you feel?
Oh, well, there's a problem.
There's a problem,
Big
right?
problem.
There's
Nobody should be there.
Exactly. There's some level of fear, anxiousness, right? There's a bunch of feelings. But what happens now? You walk in and it's your grandmother.
Okay.
Saying, hey, I'm cooking up some food. I want to surprise you, right? I'm cooking up some food. What happens?
I'm happy. I'm happy and hungry.
But is it not the same situation?
Yes, it is.
It's just the more knowledge we have on it,
Right.
we process it differently. All that fear, all that anxious was just telling you, hey, slow down, analyze the situation.
Okay.
And that's exactly what emotions do to us. It says, hey, slow down, analyze the situation. What's going on? Am I processing it the right way? Because if it's just to react, it's just anxiety. It's just, what's the first thing that's coming out? Fear, like I said, the same thing. And if you react off that emotion, what happens? You hurt your grandmother or something, right?
Right.
And that's just pure reaction.
Yeah.
It's not the way to do it. That's why people say, hey, don't react off emotions, right? It's just slow down, backtrack. It's a warning. It's that red light. It's the train thing coming down, right? That's what it is. But really process it fully. Because we don't know the whole story.
Right.
And that's all it's trying to tell you.
So we have to be able to account for the entire situation from all angles. But a lot of times we can't see all the angles.
It doesn't matter seeing all the angles. Yeah, right, because there's three sets of story. Yeah, no. But you can still see from your point of view, though, right? And you can make a guesstimate of how we're gonna process that and how we're gonna deal with it. It's that old saying that we have no control over our lives. The only thing we have control is how we react to it. It's the same way. How are you gonna react to it?
So I guess a stoic frame of mind would probably be the best way to kind of approach situations, right? Not
Correct.
getting too high, not getting too low, staying
When we have these imbalances, and we see that in bipolar, because people automatically think, this is a little skew. This is one of my pet peeves in psychiatry is the word bipolar gets thrown around so much, right? Where we think bipolar is just like a switch. I'm happy one moment and we've all said it, like you're bipolar, right? You're happy one moment and then you're like angry or sad the next moment. But it's not that switch. It's that imbalance of emotions. It's a wave, like a sound wave. Is we have our highs, but if there's a high, there's gotta be a low. And that's really bipolarness, but it's the same thing with emotions. We have to have our highs and then we have to have the lows. But there's gotta be a balance though. Most people need to work in the neutral zone is what I call.
Okay.
Is what I call. The moment you have a high, you could make a mistake. The same thing when you have a low. Your reactions are completely different.
So how do we teach children how to stay as neutral as possible?
Children is a completely different thing because children show emotions different than you and me, right? And some of it is lack of education from the parents, but you can't expect parents to be like I said, to be experts, right? An anxious child, you and me are depression, right? And I mean real depression, right? Because I think people need to realize that sadness and depression are two different things, and we look at them completely. I could be sad because someone passed away, but the moment that sadness extends to like a week's period, months, that's depression, right? So, but children express depression differently. You and me might get reclusive. We might not want to sleep. We might want to do the things that we enjoy doing. Our appetite might be suppressed. A child does not know how to process those emotions, so they'll be hyperactive. Completely polar opposite of what you and me. So when we see those things, we're like, hey, what's going on? Because think about a 5-year-old that is depressed for whatever reason is depressed. They feel weird because when we're depressed, we feel weird inside. It's not a good feeling, right? It's uncomfortable.
Right.
It's uncomfortable. A child does not know how to I'm just gonna sleep. They don't know how to fully verbalize it nor process it internally, and it's expressed through hyperactivity.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So to have a child that's neutral is kids will always have balances because they're kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're kids. I think the best way when I have parents is keeping the child busy, right? There's and just kind of going through the patterns that the child will go through, right? When we're young, we play by ourselves, then we have parallel playing where there could be someone next to us, but we still play by ourselves, and then eventually we become part of a community, and then we play together. So I say keep them busy, keep them around people. Like so, sports I think is a great thing.
Okay.
Music, art. All great things, but also being very aware of how we speak to our children, because those are the little moments that are going to stick with them. Are we overly critical? Right? Are we overly aggressive? And I'm not saying parenting is hard in itself. I'm not a parent, so I can't speak to it, but I can tell people how to basically maneuver themselves around, right? Okay. So it's being aware. Let's give examples, like being aware of how we talk, right? I think sometimes when we're parents, when we're in places of power, because we have power over our children, it's easy to just say something, just demand or ask, right? If you're a boss, when you're talking to someone that's under you, you sometimes don't think, you just say it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with children. We just speak. We don't think about the everlasting effect of it, right? So
it could be a ripple effect.
100%. It only takes so many times to call your kid stupid before they believe that they're stupid, right? It only takes so much time to tell your kid that they're not good at something before they really start believing it, especially at an age where they're just absorbing everything.
Right.
And then you can't blame that child when they're 15 and they feel like they're not good at school because you told them when they were 4 that they weren't good, right? It's the same way. So verbalizing, speaking, our actions. Are we being caring enough? Like, do we hug our kids? Do we kiss our kids? Do we tell them I love you? I've heard kids say that they've never heard their parents tell them I love you. for kids that don't know how to hug. They said that they've never been hugged, right?
And us as humans, we need that touch.
We need that
we
motherly. We need both, right? So that's another problem that it's hard not to venture off and talk about other things because we need both parents. We need that the dynamic of like family, but we need that love from mom and dad. We need their roles, right? They both play different roles. Single mom could do both roles, excuse me, but you need that fatherly figure there.
So they kind of balance each other out. The mom kind of gives the nurturing, the sweetness, the loving. Dad kind of gives the structure, the toughness.
He gives you that motivation, that drive. Again, both parents could do this, but it's harder when it's just one person. It's putting a lot of pressure on one person, especially when that one person has to work, has to cook, has to maintain the bills. That's the other aspect of parenting, right? That we have to bring up. It's a lot of the way we react is because of everything that's on top of the parent, and it's a trickle down effect, right?
So when we're stressed, the kids are going to.
When we're stressed at work, we all know we don't have enough money for X, Y, and Z, we take it out on our kids because it's an easy target. It's a super easy target.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So my thing is now, based upon what you were saying before, like with the children, you tell them they're not good in school. They're 15 years old. They think I'm not good, so I'm not even going to try. Or the kids who say, "Oh, you can always do it. You're going to be great." And when they're 15, my mom said I could do it. I'm going to be great, so I need to push and keep trying to be great. It's almost like the words and the energy we put is like fertilizer to kind of fertilize a certain outcome, a certain kind of thought process, or a certain kind of internal speak of the individual.
Internal speak is good. Another thing I tell patients is when you hear that voice in your head, who's talking? Is it your voice or is it your parents? Because a lot of times it's not our voice that we're hearing. Think about the next time you talk to yourself. Who's speaking to me? Is it Eddie? Is it your voice?
You know, it's funny you say that. As a kid, my mom would she'd always she'd say it cutesy in a cute way, like you know, you got brains, you know. And I think when you say that, just came to me right now. You know, that was the voice I heard that if I didn't do well on a test, I felt like I didn't want to disappoint my mom because she knows I could do it. I need to make sure I don't disappoint her, you know?
Exactly.
So I could definitely see, I could only imagine if she had said the opposite.
Correct. Also think about the reaction. When you fail, how do they react? Because we all going to fail. We're never going to pass all our tests, right? Like that's from childhood to adulthood. So what is the reaction that your mom gave you? What is the reaction that your parents gave you? What is the reaction that we give to our kids? Because yes, there's a difference between motivating them and wanting to be better because we expect them to be better, just like your mom expected you to be good. But you failed. Let's say you failed. What are we saying? Are we talking, hey, do better next time? It's that fine balance, that fine line of I don't want to be too soft,
right?
But I also can't. I can't be too hard because you have to teach the kid to failure is. You have to. If you don't teach failure to kids, or just in general, if you don't learn what failure is, then you're gonna suck because you're never gonna. Once you fail once,
it's gonna be detrimental.
You don't know how to get out of it, right, and if you're not given the tools to learn how to get out of something, then how can we expect you to do it? No, yeah, we could definitely, right? We could get deep into this, but it is what it is. It's all of our problems from adulthood. Not all. Again, I don't want to speak in that way, but majority of the problems that we have as adults stem from childhood. How were we spoken to? How we were given the tools as children. Some of us just have more tools than others.
So now let's go into the adulthood.
Correct.
You know, a lot of times, like I was saying before, we use certain things to kind of help us deal with certain situations. You know, so somebody might have an issue where they might drink, and that's one of those things I could never I could never truly understand. You know, individuals would drink to feel better. I don't know why it just doesn't make sense to me.
So, so I'm going to try to break this down as best as I could, right? So we'll use alcohol and substance abuse, and we're going to put them in the same bubble, right? It's just masking, right? It's the best word I could use. It's a mask, right? So maybe for you, it's hard to understand, But let's say someone that wakes up every day and they're just down. Like I have an imbalance. It happens. We have imbalances, right? They're just down. They're always depressed. They feel like, this life is not for them. They've gone through whatever, X, Y, Z. The drinking just makes you forget. That's all it's doing. It's a Band-Aid, but it's just making you forget. It's as simple as it sounds. It just makes you forget. It's instead of them running a marathon, them rock climbing, they just drink. It just takes place. Right. Because we could place our energy into good things.
True.
And into bad things. Right. And I think we spoke about it last time where, well, one thing might be good. Being like me, I'm super, I break down things a lot. It's good for my job. It might not be good for my personal life, right? It's the same way with them. That passion, that drive to be good, maybe at a sport, or maybe I excel. I'm going to use that energy to excel at work. They just put it at another place, and they put all their eggs in drinking and drugs or whatever. And it can happen, and also like we see it in sex addicts. Like it's like a million things that it can use. So it's translation of energy of emotions. And just being displaced somewhere else. That's really all it is. It's just being displaced.
So what about, so transition that into individuals who use, for example, like social media to be able to, I don't know, bring themselves up. Like I'll speak about myself initially, right? So when it comes to social media, I look at it for entertainment. If I post, I don't really post that much, but if I post something, I can't lie if, I get a couple likes. Oh, that's pretty cool, But I have to actually tell myself, hey, look, don't hold on that because that is very faulty ground to stand on.
The endorphins that we release are very similar to to doing drugs, like in our brains. Like our brain processes just the same way, right? So we have like serotonin, GABA, in our brains, right? But those endorphins that we release are the same as doing drugs, just at a lesser degree, but they're the same. So you become an addict to these things. Social media is we could talk about social media for seven episodes here because social media is intense. But going to social media and going back to kids are brought up off. So our generation wasn't a social media generation, right? Not even me. Like I'm 31, but social media started in my generation, but I wasn't born into it. Right. I knew what life was before social media. The kids born these days are born into social media. That's all they've known. They don't know what it is before. So that is their depiction, right? That's all social media is all they know.
So to them, that is the form of communication and
that is
community.
Yeah. We can't expect them to think like us because just like I can't relate to someone born in the 50s and that thought process, they can. That relationship is not there, right?
But I feel, and maybe it's me being an old head, right? I feel like the social media community, I feel like it's not healthy.
It isn't.
Because if you think about it, a lot of stuff that kind of thrives is negative in nature.
Because we've applauded negative.
Why?
So we technically applaud both, right? But I'm sure you've heard the statement, good publicity or bad publicity is still publicity. Right. So it's just the idea of publicity they just want publicity, right? And also the people that kids look up to in days are social media influencers. That's what's popular. People want to be seen. People want to be heard. We want to feel like the main protagonist in our story. And that's what social media gives you.
You can be your own superhero.
You could be your own superhero. It's the idea that when you go out, everyone's looking at me. Everyone cares about what I do when majority of the time it's proven that nobody cares. Nobody cares, brother. Nobody cares. I'll tell you that right now, nobody gives a crap. Nobody cares. Everyone's so busy in their lives. But social media transcends that and gives you that thought process of everybody cares. People are going to care if I look a certain way, if the filter's like this, but no one's paying attention to those things except you. Right. But going to the negative things, we've learned to applaud negativity. We've learned to applaud that shock and awe. And it's what we see. We were talking about earlier, why now we're so desensitized to crime. We're just sensitized to seeing death on a freaking 6-inch screen right in front of our face. When before, you could have gone a whole lifetime and never saw a dead person. Right? Like the people in the 40s, unless you went to war or something like that, they could have gone their whole life and they never saw a dead person in their lives. But now you go on social media and Google the right thing. I mean, or sometimes not even like it just pops up, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
on TikTok, it'll just pop up. Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter X now, there's so much porn or just on your feed and just pops up.
Yeah.
But we've become normalized to that. And what do kids want? Also, we're like venture off a little bit, but the new celebrities are social media influencers, right? Yeah, there's athletes now,
Mhm.
but a lot of these social media guys are getting paid more than athletes.
Yeah.
These
To get
streamers,
more eyes.
these streamers are getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. And the issue is a lot of these popular streamers, what are they popular for? Negative things. So we think if we want to be like them, and again, I'm speaking about kids, if we want to be like them, I have to be controversial. I have to do certain things. So we've normalized being negative. That's why trolling is like.
Yeah, and I was about to get into that. It's almost like trolling is starting to be more normalized.
Yeah.
Like, all right, if I want to get my point across, I have to be as nasty as possible.
Trolling is the new bullying. Trolling is literally bullying just through social media in a sense, right? It's still bullying. It's how disrespectful, how, like you said, how controversial, how bad can I say something that I probably wouldn't tell you like in person,
Mm-hmm.
over a tweet, over a Instagram post, over TikTok. Yeah, that's all it is.
So if, considering what you know now,
Mhm.
and just kind of anticipating what's to happen in the next 10 years,
Mhm.
I mean, I can't imagine, because I assume it's going to be far more immersive.
Mhm.
You have Meta, you can be
VR, 100%, yeah.
I have no idea what to expect. I have kids growing up. How do I navigate this space?
Well, we're losing, we're dehumanizing ourselves. We're losing, and I understand adapting with the times because so it's normal, but we're losing the idea of pods, of friendship, of groups, right? Yeah, social media is positive. It is positive. It brings people together from
Mhm.
different walks of life and that sort. But what I mean about dehumanizing is we're losing the idea of community. We are.
Right.
If you look at coffee bars in general, they're dying. Think about the 60s, 70s, 80s. And I'm not saying those times were correct, but you could pull examples out of them where people be like, I'm going to my local pub, like my local bar, and there's people there, there's community, right? I'm going to my bowling, I don't know, whatever it is.
I'm going to go hang out.
I'm going to hang out. Where do people hang out these days? There's nothing to hang out. That's why those places are dying. Tell me what bar do you see? Franchises, Flanagan's. Tell me what bars are open these days that you could go to. They're coffee places like Starbucks. That's it. Tell me like your local coffee place that you go to. I'm like, oh, this is my coffee place. I know everybody there. Mom and pop's place that you go. Hey, I know the owner for 15 years. It's non-existent. We're losing that communal aspect because it's just translated to social media, right? And again, none of these things are negative, but it just happens, right? It's kids play online now.
Yeah.
It's normal.
Nobody's outside riding their bicycle. It's normal. All forms of communication are via text. We don't really talk on the phone as much, right? There's a reason why there's no minutes anymore. Right. Yeah.
Nobody's
using them.
Nobody's using them. Nobody talks on the phone. We email. Someone could be next to you and they'll email you at work.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we also lost the identity of having a one-to-one.
Right.
I think that's why podcasting is so popular these days, because it brings back we're having a conversation.
Gotcha. It's touching something that we feel like we really need.
No, we've lost it. We don't really talk. We talk, but we don't talk. Think about your friendship groups. When was the last time you really sat down with a friend and really talked? We don't open up anymore, which is why therapy is so important, because therapy has just replaced what you would do with your friends back in the day. Obviously, they're educated and they go to school for it, so they have other ways to navigate you through things. But that's in general, that's all it is. You open up to your therapist, but you won't open up to your friend. Why?
Yeah, why?
We've lost that idea of my friends are there to help me, and replaced it with my friends are there when I need them, when I need a good time. That's why we don't see a lot of long-term friendships anymore, especially like in young adults, young kids. We don't, easily replaced. We don't know how to fight. We don't know how to argue. I also see that in relationships, may that be friendships or partnerships. I ask couples, how do you fight? How do you argue? And it's always very interesting because
what are the responses?
I think the general consensus that I get, and I've done this experiment with my friends, and I ask them, how do you fight with your partner? And they say, well, let's say we're fighting over the dishes. Let's say the dishes. I bring my problems. I say, hey, I don't like that you do this. The other person debates their problem, right? And we just keep arguing and screaming and arguing until what? We give up.
Till one gives up.
So one gives up, or we just get tired of fighting. And what happens to that problem? It goes back under that rug that I was telling you about. Eventually, those problems add up. And then that's why when they end and you break up, you bring up stuff from 3 years ago. Instead of fighting should be, hey, off rip. Off the moment we start fighting, one of the first things that I'm still human, right? But it's one of the first things I always tell my partners is, how can we fix this? We're going to fight. The fight is going to happen. Right. It's also taking away those emotions because emotions are heightened, but it's giving it a bit. Let those emotions kind of pass. Now let's argue. It's really debate.
Right.
Let's debate.
So, I'm cool with debates.
Because debates, doesn't matter if there's no win or lose.
Right.
We're sharing emotions, right?
I'd like to think of it as facts, but.
It is, yeah. So it's, how can we fix what we're fighting about? And if we cannot come to resolution, then should we be arguing about this?
But then there's still going to be...
There is. But there's other methods that we're not arguing or debating at that point. Now we're just having a conversation.
Okay.
Now we're just having a conversation about what's going on. Another thing that I tell people during arguments is, how did you process what I said? I can get mad at something that you tell me right now, and I'll be like, hey, I didn't like that you said XYZ. I didn't like that you said my shirt was white. Because when you said that my shirt was white, it made me feel XYZ. So it has to be a two-worded part. I didn't like what you said, and I processed as you. I'm telling you what I thought that you told me.
Right.
Because you know what you told me.
Right.
You know how you said it. I might be interpreting that the completely different way.
Right.
So you have to say how it feels and what you understood.
Right.
And then the other person has to say
how it was intended.
Correct. And then majority of the time that fixes the problem itself.
Really?
Yeah, automatically like, okay, I didn't mean like this. I call it you're speaking English, I'm speaking Chinese. We're both speaking, we just don't understand each other.
Right. So but that takes awareness too, because at that level, there's heightened emotional states at that particular moment.
So you have to separate. You have to take a moment to, hey, emotions, you're warning me. Something is going on. I'm not liking this, but we have to wait because the emotion's only telling me to stop. It's not telling me the big picture. Because once I really know the full story or somewhat of the story, and I go in, it's my grandmother cooking for me. Yeah, it's not you. It's not you. You know what I mean?
Right. Wow, super interesting, man. Yeah. Super interesting. So, my question to you is this. You know, I don't want to leave on a.
No, yeah, we can leave on a more positive note.
Yeah, but you know, what are pet peeves? What are your psychological pet peeves?
Okay. I don't know if it's a pet peeve. I don't like how we diagnose people without having no knowledge, right? Like how we just throw diagnoses as either compliments or disses, right? Oh, yeah, the whole bipolar thing, right? You're just bipolar, or you're always so depressed and things like that. Well, before knowing the full story, I think we throw diagnoses at people too quickly, and I say that too. Even people in my field, I think we diagnose too fast.
But then that's the best way to kind of us as humans, we like to categorize things.
We like to categorize. We need answers to problems. It's not always so simple, right? It's not always so simple. So I don't like that we diagnose too fast. I also don't like the rep that mental health gets.
And what's that rep?
And I'm going to speak from a hospital point of view, and then I'm going to answer that. And I see this from providers, that we treat mental health patients as second class citizens. They're 3/4 human. It's the 3/4 human law. Yeah.
Because they have a problem.
Because they have a problem, and it's not fixable through through general medicine, right? It's we treat them because they have a mental health or they might be having some type of breakdown. I could get away with something that I wouldn't do to you. Gotcha. I could talk to them however I want to talk. I don't have to give you the same customer service. Yeah, and then we do that to people in the streets, to people that we meet. They're having a breakdown, some type of breakdown or anything, and we kind of push them away.
It's a lack of respect, I would say.
It's a lack of respect. We don't see them as humans. We live in Miami. You see homeless people everywhere. A good part of homeless people are mental health patients. How do we treat them? We ignore them, right? We don't lower the window. We don't even look at them. We don't even make eye contact with them. So we just kind of push them away.
Wow. Yeah. What is it that you hope? What is it that you hope for us as humans to be better towards other humans?
I think it starts within. I think we need to learn how to speak kinder to each other, internally and externally. I think we've also confused the idea of being honest and being rude. I can be honest with you without being rude. And I think we've normalized the idea. I could be like, hey, I don't like your shirt because I just don't like it, because whatever. I don't know. It comes off rude instead of processing, be like, hey, I don't like that you did this. It goes back to what I said, because I processed like this or because I think it's detrimental to you. I think we can be honest without having, taking away that level of rudeness of dehumanizing what we're saying, because social media has made us very, very comfortable saying things that we wouldn't say in person.
That's for sure. I guess that's where the trolling comes in.
That's where the trolling comes in, yeah.
So be better, nicer people and troll a little less.
Troll a little less. Yeah. I think we are all created as good. I think every single human, I will die. That's like one of my core beliefs is we're all born good. It just happens along the way.
The evil comes.
That the bad comes. Yeah, it's what we learn as kids, that no kid is born bad. Think about it. Anytime you see a kid that maybe you don't agree with, like a child, they learn that from someone. But put two kids together, different races, different skin colors,
they're hanging out.
They're hanging out because we love. Humans are creatures of love. May you be religious or not, we are created by love, right? And I'm a strong believer in that love transcends everything. Not to get like too hippie or anything, but love transcends everything. But I think if we're kinder to ourselves, we'll be kinder to others. And I think if an act of kindness goes a long, long way.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
I would agree with
we just need a little bit more love in this world.
Yeah. I'm gonna start giving some more love out now.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you bestowing upon us more knowledge.
Of course.
I think that was pretty deep. Would you like to let anybody know?
Yeah. Again, my name is Eddy Ramirez. I'm a PMHNP. My handle is Eddy Ramirez, EDDYRMIREZ. It's my personal account. Like I said before, you're gonna see a bunch of selfies. You're gonna see a bunch of my life. It's not really like a professional page or anything, but if you ever have any questions, anybody out there has any questions or ever needs help, I'm just a DM away, and I'll do my best to guide you to some help. And if you ever need help, there's hotlines out there, and just remember that there are people out there who do love you and who do want to hear you. There's always someone out there.
Hey, we're sending love, man. We're sending love. You guys have a good one. Thanks, Eddy.
Hey, of course.
You're the man, baby.
Appreciate it, brother.
You're the best.
Thank you.
All right. You guys have a good one. Like, subscribe, comment, whatever have you. Be well.